The aroma of sizzling bacon and freshly brewed coffee wafted through the air of Rosie's Grill, a cozy diner nestled on a sun-bleached street corner in the quiet town of Maple Ridge. The morning rush was in full swing. Customers filled the booths, clinking forks and chatting over newspapers, while the kitchen buzzed like a beehive behind the swinging doors. Among the bustling servers was Lena, a 25-year-old waitress with soft auburn curls tucked into a messy bun and an easy smile that warmed even the sourest of patrons. She had worked at Rosie's for nearly 3 years and had become something of a local favorite, always quick with a refill or a kind word, never letting the long hours dull her light. But today, something tugged at Lena's focus. As she balanced a tray of pancakes and hash browns on one arm and nudged the door open with her hip, her eyes drifted to the sidewalk beyond the front windows. There, sitting at the edge of the curb, was a small, scruffy dog, a golden-furred retriever pup with matted hair and ribs that pressed visibly through his grime-covered coat. He sat quietly, not barking or begging, just watching. His large, sorrowful eyes scanned the people walking by, each face passing him without pause. Occasionally, he sniffed the air as servers whisked plates of food past the glass. Lena's heart squeezed. "Poor baby," she murmured under her breath. The dog didn't flinch. He merely tilted his head and gave a soft whimper as if he too could smell the comfort food being carried in and out of the diner. She watched him a moment longer, then forced herself to keep moving. Orders needed delivering, and table 5 had already waited too long. Still, as she dropped off plates and checked on coffee refills, her thoughts kept returning to the pup. He looked lost, thin, and far too young to be out alone. Maple Ridge wasn't unfamiliar with stray animals, but something about this one felt different, as if he were waiting for someone, or something that never came. After clearing a table, Lena passed the kitchen entrance where Ronald, the diner's manager and owner, stood with his nose buried in invoices and a pen tucked behind one ear. He was a stocky man in his 60s with thinning gray hair, a booming voice, and very little patience for anything that didn't align with his bottom line. "Hey, Ronald?" Lena asked hesitantly. He grunted without looking up. "What?" She hesitated. "There's a stray puppy outside. Looks like he hasn't eaten in days. Do you think maybe I could—" "No," Ronald interrupted, finally raising his eyes. "Don't even finish that sentence, Lena. We are not feeding strays." "But we've got a business to run, not a shelter," he snapped. "Health inspector sees a dog hanging around out front. We're done. Let it go." Lena clenched her jaw and nodded, though every fiber of her being rebelled against the idea. Ronald had rules, sure, but the amount of food that ended up in the trash every day? Enough to feed every stray in town 3 times over. Minutes later, fate stepped in when table 3 left behind a nearly untouched plate. Scrambled eggs, toast, and a few strips of bacon. Lena cleared it, her conscience wrestling with the voice in her head. She glanced toward the front. The puppy was still there. Decision made. She quickly wrapped the food in a napkin, poured a small cup of water, and slipped out the side entrance. The air was crisp, and the sunlight glinted off the glass of nearby storefronts. The puppy watched her approach with guarded curiosity, but didn't move. "Hey there, sweet boy," Lena said gently, crouching a few feet away. "I brought you something." The pup sniffed the air, took a cautious step forward, and then, overcome by hunger, devoured the food in seconds. Lena's heart ached at the desperation in each bite. When he finished, he licked her hand hesitantly, as if unsure whether he was allowed to show gratitude. "You're not alone anymore," she whispered, running her fingers over his dirty fur. Unbeknownst to Lena, a pair of eyes watched the scene unfold from inside the diner, and the moment was about to unravel her world. She lingered a little longer, letting the dog drink while she gently scratched behind his ears. His tail gave a tentative wag, the first sign of hope she'd seen from him. "You were starving, huh?" she murmured. "Don't worry. I'll figure something out." A harsh voice shattered the moment. "Lena!" She turned with a jolt. Ronald stood in the doorway, arms folded across his chest, lips pursed in that telltale way that always preceded trouble. "What are you doing?" he barked. "Did I not specifically tell you not to feed that animal?" Lena straightened up, brushing crumbs off her apron. "It was leftover food. We throw it out every day. This poor dog. This is a restaurant," he shouted. "Not a soup kitchen for dogs." By now, several customers had pressed their faces to the window, watching the confrontation unfold. "You're making a scene," Lena said quietly, trying to de-escalate. "He wasn't bothering anyone. I just couldn't." "No excuses," Ronald interrupted. "You disobeyed a direct order. You're fired, Lena. Pack up and go." The words hit her like a punch. "You're kidding. You think this is a joke?" he snapped. "You embarrassed this business in front of customers. You're out." He turned and stomped back inside, leaving the door swinging behind him. Lena stood frozen on the sidewalk, her breath catching. Fired. Just like that. For feeding a puppy. Tears welled in her eyes, but she blinked them back. The dog nuzzled her leg, as if sensing her pain. "It's okay," she whispered to him, forcing a smile. "It's not your fault." She crouched again and stroked his fur. "Guess we're both strays now, huh?" Her mind spiraled. Rent was due next week, her savings barely enough for groceries, and now no job. All because of a plate of eggs and a moment of compassion. Just then, the soft hum of an engine pulled her attention toward the street. A sleek black SUV came to a stop in front of the diner. The windows were tinted, the paint glossy and unblemished. The driver's door opened, and out stepped a man in a tailored navy blue suit with polished shoes and a purposeful stride. He scanned the area until his eyes settled on her and the dog. "Excuse me, miss?" he called out, walking toward them. His tone was calm but authoritative. Lena stood slowly. The dog, now sitting beside her, leaned against her leg. "Are you the one who fed this dog?" the man asked. Yes, she said, unsure of what was coming next. He looked down at the retriever, his features softening. "That's him," he murmured. "I've been looking for him for days." Lena blinked. "You know this dog?" He crouched, holding out his hand. "Come here, Charlie." The dog's ears perked at the name. After a moment of hesitation, he padded forward, sniffed the man's hand, then licked it. The man chuckled, relieved. "There you are, buddy." Standing again, he looked at Lena. "He's not mine. He belongs to my daughter. She's been devastated since he ran off during a thunderstorm. His name's Charlie. He's her best friend." Lena's heart squeezed again, but this time with warmth. "I'm glad he's okay." "You've done more than you know," the man said. He reached into his wallet and handed her a card. "Come to this address tomorrow. I want to talk to you about something." Lena glanced at the card. The address led to Oak Haven Rescue and Rehabilitation Center, a place she'd only ever seen mentioned on the news. "I don't understand," she said. "You will?" the man replied with a knowing smile. "Sometimes the world notices when you do the right thing. He opened the SUV door, and Charlie jumped in. Before leaving, the golden retriever looked back at Lena, his soulful eyes filled with gratitude. She raised her hand in a soft wave. "Take care, Charlie." As the SUV drove away, Lena remained standing on the sidewalk, the business card clutched in her hand. Fired and jobless, yes, but somehow, something far greater had just begun. The next morning, a light drizzle fell over Maple Ridge, misting the sidewalks and painting the trees in a soft, silver hue. Lena stood outside the tall glass doors of the Oak Haven Rescue and Rehabilitation Center, the card from the man in the navy blue suit clutched tightly in her hand. She stared up at the sign above the entrance, its green and gold lettering shimmering faintly in the rain. Her heart thudded against her ribs, and her thoughts swirled with doubt. Was this really meant for me? With a deep breath, she pushed open the door and stepped inside. The reception area was warm and inviting, with cozy lighting, rows of plants lining the windowsills, and walls adorned with framed photos of rescued animals in their new homes. Behind the front desk, a friendly-looking woman looked up from her computer and smiled. "Good morning. Can I help you?" Hi," Lena replied, brushing damp strands of hair from her face. "I'm Lena. I was asked to come by today. I met a man yesterday. I think his name was Lena," a voice called out behind her. She turned and saw the man from the diner, now dressed more casually in a soft sweater and jeans, though he still carried that quiet air of command. He strode toward her with a genuine smile and extended his hand. "I'm glad you came." Lena shook his hand. "Thanks. I wasn't sure I'd find the courage." "I understand. Let me give you a proper introduction. I'm Dorian Hale. My family runs this foundation, and yesterday, you did something extraordinary." "I just fed a hungry dog," Lena said modestly. "You did more than that," Dorian replied, leading her down a hallway. "You gave my daughter her best friend back. Charlie is her entire world, especially after everything she's been through." They stopped at a window overlooking a play yard filled with dogs of all sizes. A few volunteers tossed tennis balls while others tended to puppies and cleaned kennels. The scene was full of life, joyful chaos wrapped in barking, wagging tails, and hope. "My daughter Mira has had a tough year," Dorian continued, his voice softening. "We lost her mother in a car accident last fall. Charlie was her emotional anchor. When he ran off during that thunderstorm last week, Mira spiraled. She stopped eating, barely spoke." Lena swallowed hard. "I'm so sorry." Dorian gave a grateful nod. "But last night, for the first time in weeks, she smiled. All because of you." Lena's eyes welled unexpectedly. She had no idea her small act of kindness had rippled so far. Dorian turned to her. "Which is why I want to offer you something. A job. Here." Lena blinked. "Wait, what?" "I've watched a lot of people walk past suffering animals, but not you. You stopped. You cared. That's what we need here. People with heart. We rescue, rehabilitate, and rehome animals that others overlook. I think you'd fit right in." Her thoughts tumbled. "But I'm not trained for this. I was a waitress." "That's okay," he said with a smile. "You'll start part-time. If it works out, we'll go full-time. Sound fair?" Lena's lips parted, but no sound came out. Her chest swelled with something she hadn't felt in a while. Purpose. She looked back out at the yard where dogs leaped and played, free from fear. "I'd love that," she said finally. Dorian clapped his hands together. "Excellent. Come, let me show you around." For the next hour, Lena toured the facility. She visited the medical wing, where injured or sick animals were being nursed back to health by gentle hands. She peeked into the adoption suites, where families met their potential new pets. She walked through the supply storage, where rows of blankets, food, and medicine lined the shelves. And then came the play yard, where dogs frolicked across muddy grass and barked excitedly at her arrival. As she crouched to pet a pack of puppies tumbling over each other, Dorian stepped beside her. "It's not always fun and games," he said. "Some of these animals come to us broken, abused, abandoned. Healing them takes time." "I understand," Lena replied, rubbing one floppy-eared pup behind the ears. "But I want to help." "You already have," he said. Later that afternoon, Lena helped sweep out a kennel with one of the other volunteers, a woman named Kira who had been with Oak Haven for over a year. They chatted as they worked, and Lena found herself laughing, a lightness she hadn't felt since before being fired. Suddenly, something tugged at the hem of her jeans. She looked down to see a scruffy little terrier with wiry brown fur and a slightly crooked tail. "Well, hey there," she chuckled, crouching down. "Where'd you come from?" "That's Rusty," Kira called from the next stall over. "He's been with us a while. Sweet boy but shy. Doesn't usually come up to people." Lena offered her hand. Rusty sniffed, then licked her fingers gently. "Well, guess he likes you." Kira grinned. As Rusty nudged her for more attention, Lena felt a tug in her chest. This little guy, timid and worn out, reminded her of the pup outside the diner. That same desperate, cautious look. Maybe this was her place after all. That evening, as she walked home in the fading light, Lena felt something she hadn't felt in weeks. Hope. The job wasn't glamorous, but it was real. It mattered. Just as she passed the corner of Willow and Park, her phone buzzed. She pulled it from her pocket and saw a message from an unknown number. "Hi, this is Mira. Thank you for taking care of Charlie. My dad said you're working at the rescue now. I just wanted to say you're amazing." Lena stopped in her tracks, her heart swelling. A little girl had gotten her best friend back. A dog had found his way home. And somehow, a fired waitress had found her way forward. Maybe getting fired wasn't the worst thing that could have happened. Maybe it was the best. The sun peeked through scattered clouds as Lena arrived at Oak Haven Rescue and Rehabilitation Center the next morning, her second official day on the job. As she stepped through the front doors, a wave of soft barks greeted her, a morning chorus from eager tails and curious noses. The scent of clean straw, animal shampoo, and breakfast kibble filled the air, a smell she was already beginning to associate with comfort. She wasn't wearing a uniform yet, just her jeans and a faded flannel. But something about walking through the halls with purpose made her feel like she belonged. "Morning, Lena," called Kira, waving from the reception desk where she was checking the morning appointments. "Morning," Lena smiled, tying her hair up as she passed. "Who needs help?" "Rusty's waiting," Kira said with a grin. "He hasn't stopped looking toward the door since you left yesterday." Lena chuckled softly and headed toward the kennel where the scruffy terrier mix waited. Sure enough, Rusty was standing at the gate, tail swaying at medium speed, not frantic, not still. Just enough to say, "I'm glad you're here." She knelt and opened the gate slowly. "Hey, buddy, ready for our walk?" Rusty padded forward, nose twitching. Lena clipped the leash to his collar, and they stepped outside into the play yard. Birds chirped from nearby trees, and the chill of early autumn kissed her cheeks. As they moved together, A peace settled over her. No orders barked from an angry boss, no clanging dishes, no judgmental eyes. Just her and Rusty and a quiet slice of sky. After some time tossing a ball and laughing as Rusty ran in delighted circles, Lena sat on a bench and pulled her knees up. The dog jumped onto the seat beside her, curling against her leg. "You know," she said, scratching behind his ears, "I think you and I might have needed each other." The bond was undeniable. He may not have been the same golden retriever she'd fed at the diner, but the connection felt just as real, maybe stronger. As she sat there, Dorian Hale approached, clipboard in hand. "How's he doing?" he asked. "Better than I expected," Lena replied. "He's really warming up." "That's thanks to you," Dorian said. "Rusty's been here 6 months, never attached to anyone. But now, you're all he wants." Lena smiled and looked down at the pup. "Guess we're both a little lost and found." Dorian took a seat beside her, flipping through his clipboard. "Listen, Lena, I didn't just come to check on Rusty. I need to talk to you about something. Something serious." She straightened. "What's going on?" "It's about your old boss, the one at the diner." Ronald Grady. Lena's stomach tightened. "What about him?" Dorian glanced around and lowered his voice. "We received a call from an anonymous source a few months ago. Someone reported that Grady had been harassing strays, not just shooing them off, but worse. There were claims of him using water hoses in the winter, kicking animals that came too close, even setting out traps near the dumpsters." Lena felt the blood drain from her face. At the time, there wasn't enough evidence to pursue it. Animal control did a couple of drive-bys. Nothing stuck. But then yesterday, after hearing how he reacted to you feeding that puppy and firing you for it, I started connecting dots. "I remember seeing stray cats around the back alley," Lena murmured. "I thought it was odd they stopped coming around." Dorian nodded grimly. "If Grady's driving animals away, we need to know what's happening to them. And more importantly, we need to stop him before something worse happens." "What can I do?" Lena asked, her voice steady despite the storm rising inside her. "We're working with the Maple Ridge Animal Welfare Department now, but we need evidence, more than just stories. And honestly, you're the only one who's seen how he treats strays up close." Lena exhaled slowly. Her gut burned with anger, not just over how Grady treated her, but for every silent, suffering animal that had crossed that alley behind the diner. "I'll help," she said without hesitation. "Whatever you need." That evening, Lena sat in her small apartment with Rusty curled up beside her on the sofa. Dorian had allowed her to bring him home temporarily as a foster, a test to see how he did in a quieter environment. She already knew what the answer would be. Rusty wasn't going anywhere. Outside, the wind rustled leaves across the sidewalk, but inside, Lena reviewed her plan. She still had her old uniform, still knew the timing of the early morning shift at Rosie's Grill. Tomorrow, she would go back, not as an employee, but as an observer. Just after dawn, Lena found a spot across the street from the diner and parked her car behind a delivery van. The air was crisp and damp, and steam rose from coffee cups held by customers filing inside. She waited. Half an hour passed before she saw the familiar swing of the kitchen door and the unmistakable figure of Ronald Grady emerge from the back of the diner. In his hand, a broom. Lena's heart thumped hard as she focused her phone's camera. From behind the alley dumpster, a scrawny kitten emerged, ribs showing beneath patchy fur. It meowed softly, drawn by the scent of discarded meat. Grady spotted it immediately. "Get out of here," he shouted. Without hesitation, he swung the broom in a wide arc, striking the dumpster with a loud clang. The kitten hissed, eyes wide in terror, and tried to run, but Grady lunged forward, jabbing at it again. Lena caught everything on video. Every angry word, every swing, the fear in the animal's eyes. She bit her lip hard enough to draw blood. The kitten vanished beneath a fence. Grady stood for a moment, muttering, then stormed back inside. Lena lowered her phone, her hands shaking. "You're done," she whispered. "I'm not letting you hurt anyone else." Over the next few days, with Dorian's help, Lena assembled a small team of Oak Haven volunteers. They took turns monitoring the diner's alley, leaving food and water nearby to lure any animals out, only when it was safe. Hidden cameras were set up in surrounding buildings with permission. Lena returned to the spot every morning and evening, documenting Grady's behavior. And what they uncovered was worse than anyone had expected. Grady didn't just chase animals away. He threatened anyone who asked questions. When one volunteer left a note asking him to stop, he tore it up and screamed across the parking lot. "He's unstable," Lena muttered to Dorian during one late-night strategy session at the shelter. "But we're getting close," he replied, reviewing the footage. "Once we compile everything, animal control won't be able to look away." Lena nodded, her jaw tight. "Good. Because he doesn't get to keep doing this." Each night she returned home to Rusty, who now greeted her at the door with a soft bark and tail wag, nudging her ankle like a worried friend. She told him everything, about the alley, the footage, and the plan. "We're gonna stop him, buddy," she whispered one evening as she brushed his wiry fur. "We're going to save them all." By the end of the week, they had collected enough footage to fill a small flash drive. The videos showed Grady swinging brooms, spraying water, even setting out baited traps. There were at least 6 different strays caught on camera, and Lena had names of former employees who had seen him do worse. Dorian reached out to the Department of Animal Protection with the evidence. Within 24 hours, they agreed to reopen the investigation. "We did it," Dorian said. "This is going to shut him down." Lena didn't smile. "Not yet. It's a start, but we're not done." That night, as she walked Rusty through the park, Lena passed by a family playing fetch with their golden retriever. Her heart twisted gently. It was Charlie's breed, the dog that had started all this. She paused, watching the child giggle as the dog bounded after a stick. This was why she couldn't stop. Because every stray deserved that. Every forgotten dog or cat deserved a life where laughter echoed and love was given freely. Rusty nudged her side. "Let's go," she whispered. The battle was just beginning, but Lena was no longer alone. And this time, she was ready. For the next several mornings, Lena's life followed a rhythm of quiet determination. She would rise with the sun, walk Rusty through the sleepy streets of Maple Ridge, and then head to Oak Haven Rescue, where her hours were filled with cleaning kennels, assisting the vet techs, comforting nervous animals, and helping families looking to adopt. But even as she poured her heart into the shelter, the threat of Ronald Grady still loomed in the shadows of her thoughts. The footage she had captured had prompted the Department of Animal Protection to reopen their investigation, but the process was slow. There were formalities, inspections, reports, and while Grady's diner had begun to see fewer customers, thanks to whispered rumors and an unspoken tension in the community, he hadn't backed down. In fact, he was getting bolder. It started with a voicemail. Lena checked her phone one afternoon during a break and found a message from an unknown number. When she pressed play, a raspy voice hissed through the speaker. "You should have walked away when you had the chance." She stared at the screen, heart hammering. Rusty, who had been napping by her feet, stood and pressed his nose to her leg, sensing her unease. Later that day, when she told Dorian, his expression darkened. "That's not just intimidation," he said. "That's a threat." "I'm reporting it," Lena said firmly. "I'll do the same," he nodded. "We'll increase security at the shelter. I'll have cameras installed by tomorrow." Despite the fear curling in her chest, Lena didn't miss a single shift. The animals needed her. The mission mattered. And Grady's scare tactics only proved how close they were to bringing him down. But the next morning, Lena arrived at the shelter to find the front wall vandalized. Black spray paint scrawled 3 crude words across the bricks. "Leave our town." Volunteers gathered around in shock. Some gasped, others cursed under their breath. Lena stood still, fists clenched, staring at the dripping letters. Rusty growled quietly beside her. Dorian arrived minutes later, his jaw tight. "This has to be Grady, or someone working for him." Lena didn't say anything for a moment. Then she looked up at him. "We clean it up. You sure?" She nodded, voice steady. "I'm not backing down. Not now." With a deep breath, she grabbed a scrub brush and got to work. One by one, the other volunteers joined her, and together they erased the hateful message until the wall was bare again. That afternoon, local news got wind of the vandalism and sent a small crew to interview Dorian. Lena was hesitant to appear on camera, but when a reporter gently asked her what gave her the strength to keep going despite the threats, she looked directly into the lens and answered, "Because these animals don't have a voice. If we don't stand up for them, who will?" Her words aired that evening on the community news, and the effect was immediate. Donations began pouring in. A bakery sent free treats for the volunteers. A local contractor offered to reinforce the shelter's fencing. Neighbors dropped off blankets, toys, and food. And most importantly, adoption inquiries surged. It wasn't just a shelter anymore. Oak Haven had become a symbol of resistance, of compassion, and of doing what was right, even when it was hard. Still, the anxiety lingered. Lena found herself looking over her shoulder more often, walking Rusty a little closer, triple-checking her door locks at night. Grady hadn't been seen since the vandalism, but his silence felt more dangerous than his threats. And then came the note. One evening after locking up the shelter, Lena spotted a plain envelope taped to the front door. Her name was scrawled across it in black ink. She hesitated, glanced around the empty parking lot, then slowly peeled it open. Inside was a single sheet of paper with just 8 words. "You think you've won? This isn't over." She took it straight to Dorian, who immediately called the police. "This is escalating," he told the responding officer. "We're doing everything by the book, but he's pushing harder." The officer took a statement, promised extra patrols, and left with the note sealed in a plastic bag. That night, Lena sat on the floor of her apartment. Rusty curled beside her, his warm body pressed against her hip. Her stomach twisted with a mix of fear and fury. "He's trying to scare us," she whispered, stroking Rusty's head. "But we're not going anywhere." The next morning, the shelter team held an emergency meeting. Volunteers gathered in a circle inside the main office. Some looked anxious, others angry. "All right," Dorian began, his tone calm but firm. "We've all seen what's happening. Grady's trying to intimidate us, the vandalism, the threats, but we haven't done anything wrong. We can't just let him keep getting away with this," said Luis, a kennel tech. "What if he goes after the animals next?" "We won't let that happen," Lena spoke up. "We're doing everything legally. We've given the authorities what they need. But while they handle the law, we have to protect these animals in the meantime." Dorian nodded. "Exactly. So starting today, we're installing security cameras around the property. I've also hired a night patrol to monitor the shelter after hours." He turned to Lena. "You've been the heart of this, but I want you to take a night off." "I'm fine," she replied automatically. "You've been pushing hard," he said gently. "You deserve rest." That evening, Lena took Rusty for a long walk through the quiet side of town. The autumn air was cool, the streetlights casting soft halos across the sidewalks. Rusty walked close, ears perked, tail gently wagging. "Maybe he's bluffing," she murmured aloud. Maybe the note was just his last gasp. Rusty barked once, as if agreeing. Lena laughed faintly, the first real smile she'd had all day. But her calm shattered when she turned the corner toward her apartment and saw a dark car parked across the street. Its engine was off, headlights dim. Someone sat behind the wheel, motionless. Lena's steps faltered. She tightened her grip on Rusty's leash. "Come on," she whispered. She moved quickly, eyes darting back to the vehicle. Still, it didn't move, but she felt the gaze, heavy, watching. She reached her door, heart pounding, and shoved her key into the lock. Rusty barked, low and protective, turning toward the street. Once inside, she slammed the door and deadbolted it, then peeked through the curtain. The car sat there for a minute longer. Then, slowly, it pulled away into the night. Lena backed away from the window, hands trembling. "They're just trying to scare me," she told herself. But the truth was harder to deny. Grady wasn't done.
Sleep did not come easily to Lena that night. She lay in bed staring at the ceiling, one arm draped protectively over Rusty, whose breathing remained steady and calm. But her own thoughts spun like windmills, images of the dark car, the threatening note, and the cold certainty that Ronald Grady was watching her. At some point, around 2 in the morning, she finally drifted off, only to wake with a jolt a few hours later. The sun was barely up, casting a pale light through the window. She threw on a sweater, slipped her feet into boots, and looked down at Rusty, who wagged his tail and gave a quiet bark. "Come on, buddy," she whispered. "Let's get to work." At Oak Haven, the mood was tense. The team moved a little faster, glanced out the windows more often, and jumped at small noises. Even the animals sensed something was off, the barking sharper, the meows more insistent. Dorian was already in his office when Lena arrived. He looked up from his desk, where surveillance footage played on his laptop screen. "No sign of the car last night," he said, rubbing his temples. But the footage from the night before confirmed someone was watching. Headlights off, parked just down the street for nearly 30 minutes. Lena sat down across from him. "It was him." "I know it." "I believe you," Dorian said. "But we still don't have concrete proof it was Grady." "We will," Lena replied, her voice steady. "He's slipping. He's scared. That's why he's pushing harder." Dorian leaned back and studied her. "You know, you've changed since the day you walked in here. Fired waitress to frontline rescuer," she said with a faint smile. "No," he said. "More than that. You found your fight." Lena didn't answer. She just gave a small nod and stood. There was work to be done. By mid-afternoon, Lena was outside helping Luis clean the dog runs when she heard raised voices coming from the front of the shelter. She paused, frowning, then quickly made her way around the corner. A man stood just inside the gate, tall, broad-shouldered, with slick-back gray hair and a familiar sneer twisting his face. "Grady. You've got a lot of nerve," he said, voice sharp and mocking. "Feeding lies to the press. Making me look like some monster." "You made yourself look that way," Lena said, stepping in front of him. He looked her over with disdain. "You think this place makes you a hero? You think the town's going to choose a nobody like you over a business that's been here 20 years? Rusty growled low at Lena's side, his eyes locked on Grady. "You need to leave," Lena said, her voice calm but firm. "Now. I'm not going anywhere until I say what I came to say." Dorian appeared behind her, arms crossed. "You're trespassing. You've got 10 seconds before I call the police." Grady's sneer deepened, but he took a step back. "This isn't over. People like you. Soft-hearted types, you don't last. You'll see." He turned and walked away, but the message hung in the air like a storm cloud. After he was gone, Dorian placed a hand on Lena's shoulder. "Are you okay?" "Yeah," she said quietly. "But now I'm more certain than ever, we need to end this." Later that evening, as the shelter began to wind down for the night, Lena and Dorian sat in the staff lounge going over plans for the upcoming Rescue Day fundraiser. An event meant to raise awareness, attract new adopters, and shine a spotlight on the shelter's mission. "We need to make this big," Dorian said. "The bigger the crowd, the more public support we get. And the harder it'll be for Grady to intimidate us in the shadows." Lena nodded. "We'll need local sponsors. Maybe partner with a few small businesses. Set up booths for pet supplies, grooming, training tips. And adoption stations out front," Dorian added. "Families can meet the animals, play with them, get to know them before deciding." The more they planned, the more energized the team became. It wasn't just an event, it was a statement. They were here to stay. And Grady couldn't scare them into silence. Over the next week, volunteers passed out flyers, hung posters in store windows, and blasted event details across social media. People responded. Donations climbed. The shelter buzzed with anticipation. Still, Lena remained vigilant. She took different routes home. Walked Rusty only in well-lit areas. Checked behind her car before starting it each morning. And then, just 2 days before the fundraiser, a second note appeared, this time inside her mailbox at home. Scrawled in the same jagged handwriting as before, "Walk away now, or lose everything." She took it straight to the police. They promised to increase patrols near her apartment and keep a unit on standby during the Rescue Day event. But Lena wasn't shaken this time. She was angry. "You don't scare me," she whispered as she locked her door that night. "Not anymore." The morning of the Rescue Day fundraiser dawned clear and golden. The parking lot outside Oak Haven had been transformed into a festive space, with colorful tents, banners reading, "Adopt. Love. Repeat," and tables stacked with treats, toys, and pamphlets. Children squealed with joy as puppies tumbled over each other in the playpen. Families moved between booths, chatting with volunteers, asking about adoption requirements. A food truck idled nearby, serving hot drinks and snacks. Lena moved among the crowd, answering questions, helping shy dogs meet new people, and watching as Rusty, now wearing a little green vest that read, "Adopt Me's best friend," trotted proudly at her side. Everything was going smoothly. Until she noticed a man at the edge of the crowd. He wore a baseball cap pulled low and dark sunglasses. Arms crossed. Not browsing, not smiling, just watching her. Her heart skipped. She nudged Dorian and nodded toward the man. "You see him?" Dorian followed her gaze and frowned. I don't recognize him. I don't like the way he's watching, she said. I'll keep an eye on him, Dorian said, already moving. The man stayed for another 20 minutes, lingering near the booths but never interacting with anyone. Then, without warning, he slipped away into the crowd and vanished. Lena tried to refocus. The event was too important to let fear take center stage. And in the end, it was a massive success. 10 animals found new homes that day, including one of the golden retrievers rescued from a recent abuse case. Families left smiling, holding new leashes and starter kits. Volunteers cried happy tears. Even local news showed up, filming Lena as she knelt beside a young girl hugging her new puppy. But just when Lena thought the day was ending perfectly, she returned to the front doors of the shelter and found a third note taped to the glass. This time, the message was short. You're out of time. The moment Lena read the third note, you're out of time, she felt something cold settle in her chest. Not fear. Not anymore. Something deeper. More primal. A quiet, burning determination. She took the note down, folded it without a word, and brought it straight to Dorian. That's it, he said after reading it. No more playing defense. He contacted the police again. They sent an officer who reviewed the shelter's security footage, now loaded with more footage of suspicious vehicles parked nearby at odd hours. Still no faces. No license plates. Nothing they could act on. We need to go public, Dorian said. Not just the fundraiser. A press conference. We bring everything to light, Grady's cruelty, the threats, the vandalism, the intimidation. If the system won't move fast enough, we'll move the people. Lena stared at him. You're sure? You're the reason this place is still standing, he said. It's your story. And it's time the world heard it. 2 days later, Lena stood in front of a small crowd outside the shelter. Reporters from local news stations, volunteers, supporters, and curious townsfolk gathered beneath cloudy skies. Microphones bristled in front of her like curious birds. Rusty sat faithfully at her feet, eyes watchful. She took a breath, then stepped up. My name is Lena Brooks, she began. Some of you know me. Some of you don't. A few weeks ago, I was a waitress at Rosie's Grill. I was fired for feeding a hungry, lost dog. The murmurs began. She waited, then continued. That dog, his name was Charlie, turned out to belong to a little girl. And that one act of kindness led me here, to Oak Haven Rescue. Since then, I've learned that cruelty to animals doesn't always happen in the shadows. Sometimes it walks down our streets. Sometimes it owns a business in the middle of town. She looked straight into the cameras. Ronald Grady has hurt animals. He's chased them, sprayed them, hit them. I've seen it with my own eyes. And when I tried to stop it, he threatened me. Vandalized this shelter. Watched my home. Left notes warning me to walk away. Lena held up the 3 notes in plastic sleeves. But I won't walk away. Because the animals we protect can't speak for themselves. But I can. Applause erupted. Dorian stepped forward next. He laid out evidence. Footage, witness statements, veterinary reports from abused animals they'd rescued near the diner, and timelines that all pointed back to Grady's property. He called on law enforcement, animal rights groups, and the community to act. By the end, the reporters were already dialing their editors. It worked. Within 24 hours, the story aired across local news channels. Images of the shelter's vandalized wall, photos of the rescued strays, and clips of Lena's speech played on repeat. Donations surged. Messages poured in. Volunteers arrived in waves. Businesses offered legal aid, cameras, even fencing upgrades. Grady, however, remained silent. Until the silence broke. It happened just after sunset. Lena and Dorian were in the staff office going through adoption applications when the crash rang out, a sharp, metallic bang that echoed across the shelter grounds. They bolted outside. One of the outdoor kennel doors had been ripped open. 2 dogs, recent rescues, were gone. Rusty barked wildly, pulling toward the broken gate. Tire tracks streaked the dirt beyond the fence. He took them, Lena breathed. He came here. Dorian pulled out his phone, fingers trembling. Call the police. Now. The officers arrived quickly. But Grady was already gone. And without cameras capturing his face, all they could do was take statements and issue a report. We'll increase patrols, one officer said. But unless we catch him in the act. The words trailed off. Lena knew what it meant. They were on their own. That night, she didn't sleep. She sat on her couch, staring out the window while Rusty lay pressed against her, ears perked. They're scared, she whispered, thinking of the 2 missing dogs. They don't know where they are. We have to find them. Her phone buzzed. A blocked number. She hesitated, then answered. A low, distorted voice crackled through the speaker. This is your last chance. Then the line went dead. Lena lowered the phone, shaking. Enough was enough. The next morning, Dorian found Lena already waiting in his office. I got a call, she said. He's holding them somewhere. I know it. He didn't ask how she knew. He just nodded. What do you want to do? We find them. It was reckless. It was dangerous. But it was right. Together, they drafted a plan. They'd use their network to ask for anonymous tips. Dorian knew people. Former volunteers, vet techs, even someone in animal control, who suspected Grady had a private property somewhere out of town. By that afternoon, the tip came in. A shaky voice. No name. Just an address. A small cabin deep in the woods, outside town limits. He keeps animals there, the voice said. No one goes there. But I saw him bring crates. Then silence. Lena and Dorian packed a crate, first aid supplies, flashlights, and dog food. Rusty hopped into the back seat, alert and ready. The drive was long. Dirt roads wound between tall pine trees. The further they drove, the quieter the world became. Then they saw it. A crumbling cabin behind a rusted wire fence. No lights. No movement. They parked behind a copse of trees and cut the engine. Lena stepped out. The air smelled of pine, rot, and something else, something sharp and wrong. Rusty growled low. I'm going in first, Lena said. No way, Dorian replied. We go together. But Lena was already moving, flashlight off, steps soft against the earth. Rusty followed at her side, his nose working overtime. They slipped through a break in the fence and crept toward the structure. A whimper. Then another. Lena froze. She scanned the area and spotted them, 2 figures in a small enclosure behind the cabin. The missing dogs. Huddled together, trembling. She moved fast, dropped to her knees, and opened the latch. It's okay, she whispered. I've got you. A voice snapped behind her. What the hell do you think you're doing? Grady. He stepped into view, a heavy flashlight in one hand. His eyes were wild. You trespassing little, don't take another step, Dorian warned, appearing from the side, phone raised. Police are on their way. Grady froze, then lunged forward with a shout. Rusty exploded into action, leaping between Lena and Grady with a snarl. The commotion sent the dogs scattering. Rusty, stay. Lena called. Grady stumbled back, startled, then turned and bolted into the trees. Lena moved fast, gathering the dogs into the crate. Dorian dialed 911. Rusty barked into the night. Sirens wailed in the distance. Grady's time was up. Blue and red lights splashed across the dark trees as police vehicles pulled up near the crumbling cabin. Officers emerged with flashlights and firm voices, cutting through the tension that had wrapped itself around Lena like a second skin. She stood protectively beside the crate that now held the two trembling dogs, rescued and safe. Rusty remained glued to her side, his tail low but steady, his gaze never leaving the cabin. Dorian met the officers and handed over his phone. "We have footage." He ran when we caught him. He was keeping animals here, illegally. One of the officers examined the dogs, then turned to Lena. "You two did the right thing calling us. We'll track him down. He won't get far." But Lena didn't relax. Not until the search team returned an hour later with Ronald Grady in handcuffs, dirt streaked across his pants, fury etched into his face like deep cracks. His eyes found her across the clearing. "You ruined me." Lena met his glare without flinching. "No. You did that yourself." Back at Oak Haven, word spread quickly. The man who had threatened the shelter, harmed animals, and tried to bury the truth had been arrested. The footage, the notes, the rescue operation, they all added up. Grady now faced multiple charges: animal cruelty, harassment, trespassing, and attempted theft of protected shelter property. The town of Maple Ridge reacted in waves. Some were stunned. Others, particularly the longtime patrons of Rosie's Grill, felt betrayed. But the majority stood behind Lena. Her speech. Her bravery. The way she had refused to back down. Even those who had doubted her couldn't deny what the evidence had shown. Grady's diner closed within the week. His name scraped off the awning. Windows dark. Doors locked. Oak Haven, meanwhile, surged with renewed energy. Adoptions doubled. Donations kept coming. And Lena, once a waitress with nothing but a soft heart and a stray dog, became the face of something bigger. A movement. 3 days after Grady's arrest, Lena was back at the shelter brushing a shaggy border collie when a familiar little voice called her name. Lena. She turned just in time to see a young girl sprint toward her, arms outstretched, golden retriever bounding behind her. Mira. Lena smiled, standing to catch the hug. "Hey, sweet girl." Charlie, tail wagging furiously, rubbed his head against Lena's hip. She knelt and scratched behind his ears. "Dad said you're the one who helped get the bad guy," Mira said proudly. "I had a lot of help," Lena replied. "But you were the brave one." Mira handed her a drawing, a crayon sketch of Lena, Rusty, and Charlie standing under a bright sun with a big red heart above their heads. "I drew this for you." Lena's throat tightened. "I love it. Thank you." Dorian watched the exchange from the doorway, a soft smile tugging at the corners of his mouth. "You've got a fan club now," he said as Mira ran off to play with Charlie. Lena laughed. "Looks like it." "She's not the only one," he added. "People keep asking if they can meet the woman who took on a monster and saved the animals. I didn't do it for recognition." "I know," he said. "But maybe it's time you accepted that your story means something. And that it's just beginning." That afternoon, the shelter held a small gathering to celebrate the team's bravery. Volunteers brought food. A local musician played acoustic guitar in the play yard. Adopted dogs came back to visit, wagging their tails and nuzzling old friends. Lena stood quietly near the back, watching it all unfold. Rusty sat beside her, his leash slack in her hand, his gaze calm and content. "You did good, buddy," she whispered. He leaned against her leg, warm and solid. Dorian approached with a file folder in his hands. "I've got something for you." She raised a brow. "What is it?" He handed her the folder. Inside were documents, neatly stapled and signed. A full-time offer. Permanent. With benefits. And not just a staff role. Lena blinked. "What do you mean?" "I want you as co-director." "You've already been leading, Lena. It's time we make it official." Her breath caught. "Dorian. I don't know what to say." "Say yes," he smiled. She looked out at the people laughing, the animals playing, the life she had found, and built, from nothing but one act of compassion. "Yes," she whispered. "Absolutely yes." That night, Lena sat on her apartment balcony, the air cool and the stars soft above her. Rusty lay curled at her feet, paws twitching in sleep. In her hands, she held a small journal, a gift from one of the volunteers. On the first page, she wrote, "It started with a plate of food and a hungry dog. I thought I lost everything that day. Turns out, I found myself." She closed the journal and looked down at Rusty. "We're not done, are we?" she asked. He gave a sleepy huff, then rolled onto his back, paws in the air. Lena smiled. No. They were just getting started. Weeks passed. Autumn deepened, painting Maple Ridge in golden hues and rust-colored leaves. Life at Oak Haven Rescue found its rhythm again, but this time, steadier. Stronger. With Lena now serving as co-director alongside Dorian, the shelter's heartbeat felt fuller, more certain. Each morning began with Rusty trotting beside her, leash loose, his gait proud. He had shed the last remnants of his fearful past and grown into something remarkable, gentle, intuitive, and fiercely loyal. Shelter visitors adored him. Children asked for him by name. Volunteers joked he was the assistant director. Lena didn't correct them. One morning, as she entered the shelter's office, Dorian greeted her with a grin. "Remember that grant we applied for a while back? The expansion fund?" she asked, setting down her coffee. "Approved." "Fully." Her eyes widened. "You're serious?" "Every penny. We're finally going to build the second wing." Lena let the news sink in. That meant more kennel space. A new medical recovery unit. A larger adoption center. "This changes everything." "No," Dorian said, "you changed everything." The groundbreaking ceremony was scheduled for the following month. Local officials agreed to attend. Sponsors signed on. Even schools reached out, asking if their students could volunteer as part of community service programs. Maple Ridge had once turned a blind eye to suffering animals. Now it was becoming a sanctuary. One evening, while organizing adoption files, Lena found herself thumbing through an older binder. Inside were faded intake forms, some of them barely legible, dates, breeds, rescue notes. She paused on one. Scout. Golden Retriever. Brought in 8 months prior. Reunited with family within 24 hours. She smiled. That was Charlie, Myra's dog. The one that started it all. The image of that young pup staring into the diner's window came back to her. How hungry he'd looked. How quietly he'd waited. And how that small moment had unraveled and rewoven the fabric of her life. She pulled out a fresh sheet of paper and began drafting a new program proposal. Project Scout. A community initiative connecting volunteers with local businesses to feed and report stray animals safely, creating a town-wide safety net for lost and abandoned pets. She brought the idea to Dorian, who read through it with a slow nod. Perfect name, he said. And exactly what this town needs next. The plan rolled out within a month. Volunteers placed food and water stations in high-traffic areas. Local stores agreed to keep extra supplies on hand. Cameras monitored drop points, and when strays showed up, Oak Haven staff responded within hours. In the first 2 weeks, 5 animals were rescued. 2 reunited with families. 3 found forever homes. One gray Saturday morning, Lena hosted a small seminar for high school students interested in animal welfare. She stood beside a whiteboard in the shelter's community room, Rusty curled by her chair. "So, what does it take to make a difference?" she asked, scanning the circle of young faces. "Do you need a degree? A big title? Lots of money?" A few shook their heads. Others looked uncertain. "You don't," Lena continued. "Sometimes, all it takes is one act of kindness. Even something as small as sharing a meal." A girl raised her hand. "Is that what happened with you?" Lena nodded. "That's exactly what happened. I gave food to a stray dog. I lost my job for it. But I gained something better, purpose." The students clapped softly. Rusty lifted his head and gave a short bark, which made them all laugh. After the session, one of the students stayed behind, a quiet boy named Ezra who hadn't spoken much. "My family, we had to give up our dog last year," he said. "I didn't know places like this existed. I want to help." "You can," Lena said, kneeling to meet his eyes. "You already are." She handed him a volunteer form. "We'll be lucky to have you." Later that night, Lena walked the shelter grounds, checking the gates and lights. The cool wind rustled the leaves. Rusty padded along beside her, sniffing at patches of grass and pausing at his favorite tree. When they reached the edge of the yard, Lena stopped and looked out at the town below, its rooftops glowing orange under the setting sun. Everything had changed. She thought back to that first day outside Rosie's grill. To the look in Charlie's eyes. To Ronald Grady's fury. To the fear, the threats, the doubts. And now, Grady had been sentenced to 6 months in jail with 2 years of probation. He was barred from owning animals. His former diner had been purchased by a local cooperative and was being turned into a pet-friendly cafe where all proceeds would benefit Oak Haven. She never would have believed it then. But every hardship had led here. Rusty nudged her hand. "Yeah," she said softly. "We did good." That weekend, Lena received a letter in the mail, handwritten, no return address. "Lena. I saw what you did. I wasn't brave enough to speak up when I worked for him, but I'm proud of you. You stood up when the rest of us were silent. You saved more than animals. You reminded people what kindness looks like. Thank you." There was no signature. But the words stayed with her. Months later, Oak Haven was thriving. The new wing neared completion. Project Scout expanded into neighboring towns. Lena was invited to speak at conferences, schools, and shelters across the state. Everywhere she went, she carried one message. One act of kindness can start a chain reaction no one sees coming. It wasn't about heroism, or spotlight, or revenge. It was about doing the right thing when it mattered. And as she tucked Rusty into his bed each night, as she walked through the shelter halls filled with wagging tails and soft purrs, Lena knew this was exactly where she was meant to be. It all started with a plate of food and a hungry dog. And it became a story of courage, compassion, and homecoming, for her, and for every soul who had ever been lost.